Hello everyone and welcome back to this playlist where I'm talking about a different microservice pattern in Node.js. Okay, so now let's talk about practical. We have talked a lot about theoretical aspects, theoretical definitions of these different microservice patterns. Now we will just talk about in the language of code. Okay, so what I'm going to start with is just a basic Node.js template. So it depends on you. You wanted to use just an Express template or a simple Nest.js template. Nest.js is just a framework of Node.js to write the APIs. So I already have this skeleton of code. Okay. So as I told you earlier that we will be doing a demos using the Docker and Docker Compose. So you should be aware about how this Docker Compose works. So I have created this Docker Compose file, and here you can see all the services which I have. Okay, I have three different node services: node 1, node 2, node 3, and I have a MySQL service. Okay, and in this I have a Docker file which is doing nothing but exposing 3000 port, and this is a debugger port doing npm install, copying the current working directory code to the container, doing npm install, then exposing the port and doing npm run debug, which is there in my package.json, which is starting the Nest.js. I mean, you can say the Express server on some port. If you're not familiar with the Nest.js, you just consider it as a simple Node.js Express template, which is starting the Node.js server on a particular port. Okay, so what I did is I have these three different services. They are using the same set of code. I didn't create them as a three different Node.js containers having three different type of endpoints. I mean, three different endpoints or three different services. What I'm doing is on the same code base I created these three different containers. You can see they are looking at the same Docker file. The ports are different because otherwise the host port will be conflict. Container port can be the same, like 3001, here is 3002. So on the host 3000, 3001 and 3002 are occupied for these three services, and then MySQL, because all these Node.js services are talking to MySQL. They are establishing the MySQL connection. Here is my MySQL connection details, basic things, what port mapping we are going to have, volume mount, this MySQL data will be mounted to the container volume. Okay, and these are my Node.js containers. The simple volume is current directory volume is mapped to the user src app for all the containers. So I have actually four services. So when I do Docker Compose up, I should be able to see all these four containers up and running. Now the advantage of using Docker and Docker Compose here is, now instead of Node.js service, Node.js service, we can have a one cache service, one middleware service, one API gateway service, and we can have a nice demo around all these different services. One may be a Redis, one may be a Mongo, one may be a MySQL, one is a simple Node.js service running using Express, another using Nest.js, or any other tool like Logger tool or Logger library or Logger tool you have installed, or like ELK, Elastic Logs Test, or Kibana you are running where you can see the logs. That is just a, now in the current days you can run any tool just using Docker pull, Docker run that container name, like we were doing for Redis and all. Okay, so this is my Docker Compose file. If I wanted to spin up, then I can do Docker Compose up, and I already did it. So you can see I have these three different services. Here is my different services, and here is my MySQL. Yes, so this is my MySQL container which is running. You can inspect it. Okay, so inspect will give you the whole information about the MySQL container which we have. This is the root port and MySQL username, password, path, all the versions, and this is the current log. This is the status is currently running, and I have other Node.js services. So these are three Node.js services pointing to the same code base. Okay, if you inspect it, you will come to know that it is pointing to 3001 port. So if you hit 3001 on browser, you will be able to see something. I mean, whatever the routes it is having. Status is up and running. These are the logs, right? Similarly, we have three more Node.js services and one MySQL service. If we just try to see what these containers are having, this is a MySQL container. It is actually starting a test database with all these username, password, credentials, and volume on. Okay, so this is the idle setup. We will be just replacing the other two Node.js services with some other microservices which can be helpful for us, maybe a cache service, maybe a Mongo service, MongoDB service, or maybe another Node.js service. Currently, all these Node.js service actually being built from the current folder or current source code, right? It is just for demo, like how you can spin up the containers using Docker Compose file. In the services, you can just keep adding all the services. These services require a Docker Compose file, the port binding, volume binding, and depends on, because Node.js services depending on the MySQL. Until unless MySQL is not up, your Node.js container will break, because we are connecting to MySQL in the Node.js while starting up the application, right? So if you try to see our logs, here you can see all the three services are coming up. Let me show. Yeah, these are the three different services pointing to the same code base, and all are up, right? So if you just try to hit this get URL or ping URL, so these are the routes I'm having. So you can think like these are the three different microservices you are running on a same network, and how this Node.js service are able to talk to MySQL, because they are in same network. So if I wanted to talk to MySQL, then I will not be using local host. If you just see the environment, I am passing DB host as a MySQL, DB type DB host as a MySQL, right? So this Node.js container will understand MySQL as another container. If you just try to put localhost or something else, it doesn't understand what localhost is. Inside containers, they are talking with the name of the container. Container 1 will talk to container 2 from its name. Okay, they are able to talk to each other in the using Docker Compose, because it is a default, it is creating default one single network. So if you just try to see, if I try to create a new tab and try to see the services, so these four services I'm running, right? And Docker images, maybe more. Docker PS, all the current running process. Okay, I can also try to inspect a particular container, right? It is showing you the network configuration of this particular container, how this container is able to talk to another container. It's a very big long configuration file, status running, pose and all. This is the relative path, and there should be a common network. This is a network bridge, network settings, right? So it is creating a network bridge, and all the components are sharing the same network bridge so that they can talk to each other. So this video is just about to make you familiar about how the Docker works, how the Docker Compose works, how our containers will talk to each other. Currently we have these four different containers, 3 Node.js and 1 MySQL. Okay, in future we might be having many containers. Okay, like you can introduce one ELK tool or another console, another tools which you can use for the log tracing, performance metrics, or log aggregator. All these services you can write, which will be doing a different task. Okay, there may be another database, because we are writing microservices where every containers can have its own database, or there may be a shared database. Currently we have a single database and all the three services are talking to the same data source. So it's not an idle case. I'm just talking about how to structure a Docker Compose file to spin up all the containers locally and allow them to talk to one another. Okay, now we will build on top of this, like how we can go forward from here. We will spin up all the services. We can put some Nginx service also here. That will be a single entry point for the client to talk to these microservices, and there can be a different API routes. So like if you are hitting /API, then this request should go to node container. When you are hitting API 1, API v1, then it should talk to node 1 container. So this should be your default communication on 3000 port. This should be a communication on 3000, because container port can be same because they are in their own namespace. v2 will be node 3000, node 2 3000. Okay, All these scenarios we will be covering with the local setup. Thanks everyone.